Are there any questions on part 3 before we move on? Okay, so part 4 is dedicated to understanding and documenting required continuing education in the area of food safety. This is also where employees must review and sign the Employee Health Policy Agreement and Employee Food Safety Checklist each year. It is important to note that while it is not required that documentation of completed food safety continuing education be filed in this section, it needs to be available for review whenever requested, whether by an NCDPI staff member, such as on a TA or an AR, or by a local health inspector should you have one, although most of you probably do not. You could also file this information with your other USDA professional standards documentation. So part 4 contains all continuing education and professional development training documents for employees. These include your health policy agreement, food safety checklist for employees, food safety and HACCP continuing education report template, and allergen awareness training for servers or cashiers. And we'll review each one of these areas in more detail. Again, if not maintained with your HACCP book, we recommend keeping the documentation of food safety or HACCP continuing education with your USDA professional standards documentation. Copies of signed employee health policy agreements, food safety checklists for employees, and food safety and HACCP continuing education reports, as well as allergen awareness training for servers and cashiers, could also be kept in Part 4, if not with your professional standards documentation. This is the list of forms for our Part 4 continuing education and professional development section. The Employee Health Policy Agreement and the Food Safety Checklist for employees must be completed for each SFA employee every year. The Food Safety Checklist is now required for all employees annually, not just when they are hired. There are both English and Spanish versions of both the Employee Health Policy Agreement form and the Food Safety Checklist for employees. There is also another Employee Health Policy Agreement template that includes the Employee Health Policy Agreement form just mentioned, as well as a longer explanation of the policy. It is available should SFAs wish to adopt the complete policy for their school or district. Note that any catering staff from a restaurant or non-SFA food establishment does not need to complete these documents. They should maintain some form of assigned Employee Health Policy Agreement form at their food establishment where the food is prepared, as required by the North Carolina Food Code. The Food Safety and HACCP Continuing Education Report form can be used as a template to record completed hours of food safety and HACCP-related continuing education. If you're using it, it should be filed in this part of the HACCP plan template. Ideally, again, you could keep it with your professional standards documentation. A substitute employee list template is also available not only for helping identify regular substitutes, but also for making sure they've completed the necessary food safety forms, that health policy agreement form and the food safety checklist for employees. I'm going to go into a little more detail about the health policy agreement form. According to the food code, each food establishment must have a written employee health policy agreement to ensure employees or conditional employees notify the person in charge or PIC when they experience any of the symptoms, diagnoses, and exposures that are transmissible through food, so that the PIC can take the appropriate steps to prevent the transmission of foodborne illness. This employee health policy document explains which symptoms and illnesses employees must report and is a tool to help the PIC to comply with the requirements outlined in the food code. Even if you are not a permitted food establishment, we require that all SFA food handlers review and sign this policy each year. Even though the incidence of foodborne illness in school nutrition programs is fortunately low, there are still risks. So foodborne illness prevention begins with properly trained staff not working when sick with vomiting, diarrhea, sore throat with fever, or jaundice, or if they have been diagnosed with a reportable communicable disease. The PIC or your team leader should continue to promote and reinforce awareness of this policy to all food handling employees on a regular basis to ensure compliance. The PIC or team leader should train employees annually on the employee health policy and ensure that each food handler signs a new copy every year. Again, please keep signed copies of this health policy agreement on file. Each of our North Carolina HACCP plan templates includes a copy of this policy agreement, as I said, both English and Spanish versions. But you can also contact your school nutrition consultant for a sample of the health policy agreement form. So I want to briefly review what the person in charge or team leader should do if an employee showed signs of any symptom listed on the slide. If any employee shows signs of these symptoms, they need to be sent home immediately because they can contaminate food and cause a foodborne illness. These are employees who are handling the food. Documentation such as the employee illness log must be completed when employees are sent home. That is in your as-needed forms. Having this documentation is extremely important, especially when an illness outbreak occurs. Do keep in mind, though, that diarrhea and vomiting from non-infectious conditions do not apply to this policy. However, a physician should make the diagnosis of that non-infectious condition causing the diarrhea and vomiting, and the employee should provide written documentation to the PIC or team leader and indicating the condition is non-infectious. Employees must report exposure to or diagnosis to any of the following foodborne pathogens. They are listed here: norovirus, hepatitis A virus, Salmonella typhi, Shigella, E. coli, and non-typhoidal Salmonella. These pathogens are identified as being highly infectious and are easily transmitted to food by sick employees. According to the Food Code, it is the responsibility of the person in charge to report to the health department when an employee is diagnosed with one of these big 6 illnesses shown here. Even if you are not a permitted food establishment, it is important to report these illnesses or exposures for any of the pathogens listed here by anyone handling the food. This is out of an abundance of caution in an effort to prevent any potential foodborne illness outbreaks. Continuing education and training is an important part of your HACCP plan. Educational opportunities should be specific to the operation. It should include an overview of the safe food handling procedures, the prerequisite programs, how the standards will be monitored, and on what forms observations are to be recorded. Different amounts and types of training are required for you and your staff. For those of you who are school nutrition administrators, you must hold a Certified Food Protection Manager certification, which we've already alluded to and we'll talk about in more detail shortly. All of your staff at the SFA that handle food, including you, if you do, must receive at least 4 hours of food safety continuing education every 3 to 5 years. Generally, this can include any 15-minute or longer food safety trainings, whether in person or online, such as back-to-school training on food safety, staff meetings that cover food safety, online modules, or even a preparation course for taking or recertifying your Certified Food Protection Manager certification. Temporary staff, substitutes, and volunteers who handle food should receive food safety training to provide at least a basic or targeted food safety training relevant to the job duties being performed. It is also recommended to provide hazard communications and pesticide or pest management continuing education as it is relevant to employee job duties. Continuing education and training is an important part of your HACCP plan, as we've said already, and that educational opportunities should be specific to the operation, and we've discussed these. But as you'll note here on the slide, there are several continuing education resources, including the Safe Plates for School Nutrition Staff curriculum to teach HACCP to school nutrition staff. The first one I just mentioned, that Safe Plates for School Nutrition Staff, is developed by NC State University and is a 6-module course which provides a minimum of 4 hours of professional development. There are an additional 4 modules in the course which can be completed for a total of 8 hours of instruction. This course has been approved by the School Nutrition Association for Food Safety Core Course, for the Food Safety Core Course for their certification program. Completing the entire 8 hours of instruction will provide the required credit for food safety. Information about how to access this online course is available on our website under the Continuing Education and Professional Development section. Another well-known option is the Food Safety in Schools curriculum from the Institute of Child Nutrition. You may remember it as something called Serving It Safe. This instructor-led course provides 6 lessons in basic food safety. Participant and instructor resources are available for download from ICN's website. Another option for those of you with limited time is called our short module series, No Time to Teach or No Time to Train. Each lesson is 15 minutes, and there are a total of 13 lessons. Lessons are instructor-led, and this resource is currently located on our website in the Food Safety HACCP section. Please note, though, that we are in the process of updating these modules, so at times they may be temporarily unavailable. Many other resources are available for food safety continuing education. I've only listed a few here that we wanted to highlight today. Another important area that should be covered is allergens. All school nutrition employees serving on a line or operating at the point of service, such as a cash register or checking a roster, must be properly taught in food allergy awareness as it relates to their assigned duties of serving customers, such as knowing the proper response to questions about allergens in food served. Allergen awareness training is required annually. Also refer to Part 1 of the HACCP plan under the prerequisite programs, as well as Part 4 for more information about this requirement. You can use a variety of sources to meet the requirement for allergen training. The Safe Plates for School Nutrition Staff course has one of those bonus modules specific to allergens. The Institute of Child Nutrition also has a variety of allergen training resources. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Certified Food Protection Manager certification we've mentioned several times already. In North Carolina, we require all school nutrition administrators, regardless of your type of food service operation, to get a Certified Food Protection Manager certification. This is to ensure that school nutrition program leaders across our state have an essential foundation in food safety knowledge and understanding. Now let's look at the requirements for this certification. All Certified Food Protection Manager exams must be approved by the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. Approved exams are currently offered by the following organizations listed here: Prometrics, National Registry of Food Safety Professionals, 360training.com, National Restaurant Association's Educational Foundation, and statefoodsafety.com. The Safe Plates for School Nutrition, the Safe Plates course for managers, which is this certification course, has previously used the National Registry version of the exam. They've also used it from Prometrics. As far as I understand, the National Restaurant Association's Educational Foundation is the exam that's administered as part of the Serve Safe for Managers course. The exam must be passed successfully to receive the certification.